are unaware of the risk they're in, they move around randomly. And their random movement makes the tray even. They're just randomly moving around. If you scale it up and put humans on it, they sink within seconds because they think, oh, we're tipping, we must run to this end. And of course, they all run to that end, and so it tips over. In other words, consciousness of the problem, attempting to deal with it, being aware of it, is the biggest problem of all. And that's something new to us, because in the old days, we lived in small groups who just didn't know how awful humanity was, what sins we were committing, how dreadful we were making the world. It was only through the telecommunication and through the recent development of the global village, or whatever you want to call it, your countryman McLuhan, that we have actually become aware and are now likely to be running around in that tank and causing it to fall over. Whereas really we should just be unconscious and get on with living and randomly run about in our tank, and then we'll never sink. Does that make sense?
I want to answer the behaviorist question. It's transformed into behavioral neuroscience and affective neuroscience and being taken over primarily by the biologists.
Yeah.
And part of the reason it's vanished is because it's become more and more difficult to do animal experimental work for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
And because it requires a tremendous amount of technical expertise.
Right.
So,
but the theory of conditioning has also vanished with it.
No, it's transmuted and become more sophisticated, and being incorporated into all sorts of theories. The most outstanding behaviorist was Jeffrey Gray, and he wrote a book called The Neuropsychology of Anxiety, which is an absolute work of genius, and it's very heavily influenced by the Skinnerian tradition.
Right.
I want to tie something back again, and I've been poking you about this, and I don't want to stop yet. Back to the distinction between you and Dawkins. Because I see you as a border figure. You've got one foot in the
Yes.
the rationalist, humanist, atheist, empiricist world, firmly planted. But then there's the artist in you, which is a major part of your personality, and obviously a part that's incredibly productive and very well received, and that has an intellectual end as well. That domain, that second domain that you occupy, isn't formalized. The investigation of that isn't formalized as well by the atheist community.
No, you're right.
They lose what's there, and they don't value it properly. And that's a problem. Like with Dawkins, for example, I get letters from lots and lots of people, and lots of them are nihilistic. And because they're nihilistic, they're suicidal. I had a friend, I went for a walk with him the other week, and he was a communist, atheist when he was a kid. He grew up in Poland, and he had criticized his family for celebrating Christmas because it was irrational. And then he realized at one point, he said, I could kill Christmas and we just have another weekend. That wouldn't actually, right, yeah. Because there's a magic there.
Yeah.
That rationalism can destroy.
Yeah.
And for reasons...
I have exactly that problem politically with the royal family, which on the face of it is, of course, preposterous, more preposterous even than Christmas and religion, is the idea that we still have a royal family. But part of my belief in ceremony and ritual and symbolism is I look at America and I think if only Donald Trump and now Biden, if every week they had to walk up the hill and go into a mansion in Washington, and there was Uncle Sam in a top hat and striped trousers, a living embodiment of their nation, more important than they were. That's the key. Uncle Sam, is America. The president is a fly-by-night politician voted for by less than half the population, and he has to bow in front of this personification of his country every week. And that personification, Uncle Sam can't tell him what to do. Uncle Sam can't say, no, pass this act and don't pass that act and free these people, give them a pardon. All he can do is say, tell me, young fella, what you done this week? And he'll bow and say, well, Uncle Sam, say, oh, you think that's the right thing for my country? Well, that's what a constitutional monarchy is. And of course it's absurd. But the fact that Churchill and Thatcher and everyone had to bow every week in front of this
There's
woman.
something.
There's something. And also, empirically, look at the happiest countries in the world. That's all you need do. And they happen to be constitutional monarchies. Norway, Sweden, Benelux, all this, Japan, they're always right up there on the list. Now, it may be that we can't find the causal link between their constitutional monarchy, but it might just be something to do with that. And that's, it's a way of answering your question. In the same with religion, is that I can see the absurdities of the claims of many religions, and I can see the history of the wickedness and oppression and suppression, particularly in my own instance, being gay, growing up gay, and there's a long history of religion in particular being intolerant. And to this day, even this Pope Francis, whom I had some hopes for, seems to be beginning to add to an ancient slander and nonsensical attitude towards sexuality, which is extremely annoying and upsetting. But I kind of, that doesn't mean I throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. I can see, in the same way that I don't believe in Greek mythology, in actual fact, I don't believe that on Olympus Zeus lived there with his wife Hera, but I do believe Hermes and Hera and Zeus live within us. There is a Hermes inside me. There is a trickster, a liar, a joker, a cute, funny side, as well as a harmonic Apollonian and a bestial Dionysian side with his appetitive and addictive and frenzied. And I see the value and the truth in those religious manifestations, those principles, those elements of my character and the character of the human family.
In Mesopotamia, the god who became supreme was Marduk. And
yes.
He had 50 different names. And one of them was he who makes ingenious things as a consequence of the combat with Tiamat, chaos, essentially, which is a brilliant name. But so Marduk was the aggregation of 50 gods.
Yeah.
So imagine that each of those gods was the representative of a tribe at one point.
Yes.
And that would be the value system of the tribe personified, something like that.
And indeed, the Greek gods derived from those Mesopotamian gods. They came across.
Yeah, exactly. A fundamental development in the history of religious thinking and dramatic thinking. Well, let's say each god is a manifestation of a value structure.
Yeah.
And we say, well, value structures have some commonalities across them, just like games have some commonalities across them, or languages have some commonalities across them. So then you start to aggregate gods.
Yeah.
And you produce a meta god, and the meta god is Marduk, and he's all eyes because he pays attention, like